Good afternoon to everybody. For me, it's, I think, evening. We just arrived this morning. Charles Bronfman, where are you? Thank you very much for your introduction. Debbie, Mayor Booker, it's an honor to be with you on the panel. When Mark Charandoff and a few Israeli friends, Alan Feld, Yitz Applebaum, talked to me after I was elected about coming to JFN, I decided to close the circle and to do my first public appearance in the States as Mayor of Jerusalem here with you, due to the fact that I know many people in this crowd for many, many years, and it's an honor for me to chat with you about the future of Jerusalem from this podium. So first of all, thank you, Mark, for the invitation. It's an honor to be here. And to continue what Charles talked about in terms of what does a guy like me do as Mayor of Jerusalem? Why? Why put your healthy head in a sick bed? And the answer is I got exposed as a philanthropist. I was minding my own business in high tech for many, many years, thank God. Like other friends I see here in the crowd, we've done for our home. But when I started getting involved in education in the city of Jerusalem and started asking questions and realizing that even if you put millions of dollars in the education system, it's not enough, as Charles said. And you've got to really think about how to make a bigger difference. And then I started realizing that some of the problems is that in Israel specifically and in Jerusalem, we talk about a public sector that is lagging or lacking a few skills, entrepreneurial skills, business-oriented thinking, challenging, focusing on the key problems of the city of Jerusalem, and really partnering with, when needed, with philanthropists, with business people, with government. Partnership in the Middle East, which is used to win-lose environment, is not a simple thing to do. But the exposure as a philanthropist really got me concerned about the facts that many people don't necessarily know. The facts about Jerusalem. That indeed we've become the poorest city in Israel. That we're suffering from negative migration of about 17,000 Jews on a yearly basis. 17,000 Jews. And people leave because they can't find quality jobs, price of housing, the education system, and the services they're getting from the municipality are not competitive enough relative to services they get from other cities. And so when you realize the current trend in the city and you extrapolate into the future, you realize that if we continue losing 1% of the Jewish population every 3 years, as soon as 2035, we're not going to have a Jewish majority in Jerusalem, the heart and soul, and the most important city for the Jews, if not for the rest of the world. And concerned about those trends is what made me decide to retire 6 years ago and work for $1 a year for the future of the city of Jerusalem. And I realized that you have to come with a different mindset if you want to make a difference in the city of Jerusalem. You have to come with a mindset of getting Jerusalem to stand on its own 2 feet. Let me tell you a story that really influenced my life. And it was about almost 20 years ago, I think 18 years ago. Our business wasn't doing that well. We had a few challenges. It was the beginning of the high-tech career. I worked with my mother-in-law, Lorna Sakalovsky, as Charles said earlier. And one day, I had enough courage to go to Charles Bronfman and ask him for a loan, a $50,000 loan. You think I forgot, Charles? It took us a few years to return that loan, but it was one of the most important things I was ever given, a loan that I had to return. And I worked extremely hard to repay that loan. And at the time, $50,000 was what made a huge, huge difference for my partners and I. And I learned from Charles Giving what it is to give people not exactly philanthropy, but to help people stand on their own 2 feet. And when I approach the education system, and I want to focus on job creation in the city of Jerusalem, and I want to focus on getting the young to stay in the city of Jerusalem, it's all with one big vision of changing direction for the city of Jerusalem, keeping the young, the high educated people to stay in the city of Jerusalem, to provide them better jobs, to provide a better future for the city of Jerusalem and for the kids. And what I've learned in my 5.5 years as a public servant, as head of opposition and now as mayor, that it can be done. It's not an impossible task. And to turn the city of Jerusalem around, you need a few things. You first need a vision. You have to articulate and outline and focus the people on the key critical path issues that must be addressed. And interestingly enough, in the last 5.5 years, with friends sitting here in the crowd, we started initiatives to create jobs and to focus on Jerusalem's competitive advantages and to focus on how reforms in the education system are done in other places in the world than in Israel. Learn from other people's successes. It can be done. And as mayor, I've shared this vision with the people in Jerusalem, running for mayor. And for me now, it's all about execution of the vision of how to take Jerusalem and to return it to the front stage of the world and enable Jerusalem to become a destination site for pilgrims and tourists throughout the world. Exploit the huge potential of Jerusalem. And when we talk about potential, if other major cities in the world like Paris, London, New York get anywhere between 40 to 60 million tourists a year, it's a shame that Jerusalem, with all its assets, we only have about 2 million tourists a year. And in order to improve and increase the number of tourists, we must invest in culture. We must invest in the way Jerusalem looks. And we have to develop the city of David and other huge, very, very important sites in the city of Jerusalem. We have to improve the quality of experience coming to Jerusalem. We have to make sure that the 2, 3, 4, 10 million tourists a year that can come to Jerusalem have a place to stay, have a better experience, send them as ambassadors to the whole world to talk about the strengths and the common denominator and the good things of Jerusalem. We have to dramatically invest in the city of Jerusalem. I've shared with you some of the content, where we have to go. Another very, very important piece is how do we do that together? And that's where private-public partnership comes into place. Private-public partnership for me is how to encourage the private sector to make it worthwhile for them to stay here in Jerusalem and to open businesses. It's about aligning interests with the government, that in the last 4 months there's nobody to talk to, hopefully next week. But we have to focus and make sure that the government is aligned with the same vision. We have to make sure that philanthropists share the same vision, align more and more of the capital to the same direction. I've been speaking to a number of the funds, the Jerusalem Foundation, Lynn Schusterman's Foundation, Charles and Andy, and others, and of course you at JFN. There's no reason in the world why we must not align the interests. Look at things that interest you, that are in the same interest of the city, that fall in the same vision, and expand the relationship of private-public partnerships. I know it can be done. I've done that before as a philanthropist. I understand what we must do to make 1 + 1 = 3. There are things that only municipality and government can do. There are things that only philanthropists can do. And there are many, many things that when we work together, 1 + 1 = 3, and I'm sure that in the discussion, if you'd like, I'll be happy to expand on that. I know from my experience as a philanthropist, as a paratrooper, as a public servant, and a businessman, as an entrepreneur, that when we combine all those together, it can be done. We have in Jerusalem a window of opportunity, a window that enables us to work extremely fast with very strong backwind from the public. 30 out of 31 member councils in the council coalition, very strong coalition that enables us to move fast, all committed to the vision I shared with you. So on this stage, it's an honor for me to request from you, to propose to you, to seek partnership with the city of Jerusalem. We're all shareholders of the city. The future of the city of Jerusalem is unmatched, unprecedented important, more than any other city in the world. I'm just the messenger, and I'd love to partner with you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is a thrill, really, to be here, and I'm grateful, Mark and Mr. Bronfman, for the invitation and all those who made my appearance here possible. The truth of the matter is, I don't think I would be here, having now been on a trip where I'm finishing up and heading back to Newark, where I spoke to AIPAC in Houston. Really, my experience in the Jewish community would not be possible if it wasn't for when I was 22 years old, stumbling upon a room that I could best describe at that point in my life that looked like a scene from Yentl, with men with black hats and long coats and strings hanging out from their pocket, and I thought if I pulled them, what's going to unravel on the strings? I stumbled into this room and quickly tried to get away, but a woman, very frum Orthodox woman, runs over to me and says, "Are you Cory Booker?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "The woman you were supposed to meet here couldn't make it, but this is not a mistake. This is where you were to meet." And I said, "Okay." And she invited me to sit at a very large banquet table full of people that literally, it was 1992, I'd only seen people looking like this on CNN in the Crown Heights riots. And I sit down next to a guy who in every way is different than me. I'm black, he's white, I'm tall, he's short, I'm very handsome. But that person, the second I met him, it was Bashert. And I didn't even know what the word meant, but it was Bashert. He was the one that introduced me in a serious sense to the study, to the understanding, to the experience of Judaism. He and I did serious study. I studied the Torah. I studied books by Elie Wiesel, books about Maimonides, books by Hillel. And he too did serious study, studying books by Martin Luther King, by Frederick Douglass, by James Baldwin. And we became friends. But more than that, I began to understand in a deep way, and I talk about it in synagogues and other groups all the time, the urgent need for the Jewish voice, the urgent need for Jewish values, that we in this world of peril, of crisis, of challenge, must have Jews who stand up authentically and unapologetically for who they are and do what is commanded by the Torah. What are we about if we are not in this room for a purpose? For a purpose. If you understand Abraham, or if you look at Moses, these are men that had the audacity to even argue and fight with God. Abraham saying, "Won't the God of mercy show mercy," as he argued with a deity himself. We just studied a few parshas ago where you had, yes, I do know the parsha of the week, where you had Moses come down from the mountain and see the Jews worshiping a golden calf. And God saying he was going to smite and destroy all the people. And indeed, you had Moses turn to God and say, "Ma hane na mi sifreka." If you destroy these people, then erase me from your book. This is the call of the Jewish people, to do justice, to heal this world, to tikkun olam. We are here for a purpose that we cannot deny, So I'm grateful to be invited here. I have to say that the real reason I am here is because of my friend Rabbi Shmuley Boteach. I want to thank him for what he's done in my life and what I've witnessed through your Jewish Values Network. As you understand what Isaiah said, Judaism is not an insular faith. It must be a light unto nations. It must teach the world about godliness and goodliness. And this is why I'm privileged to be here with this mayor to my right. What he is endeavoring upon is critical not just to Jews, it's critical for our world. There's a wonderful story about Jerusalem that I tell to my own community. It's about Tisha B'Av. It's about the second destruction of the Holy Temple in the year 70. It's a story about where the Romans could not take the city. And Josephus went to the Roman army and said, if you want to take this city, pull back your armies, lift your siege. And they pull back their armies, and they wait. And it was the divisions and the fights amongst Jews, the divisions and the fights internally, that produced the weakness that in the year 70 allowed the Roman armies to take the city. It screams to a historical imperative. It's true for a family, it's true for a city, it's true for a state, a nation, the world. If there's no enemy within, the enemy without can do you no harm. And to me, what is the enemy? Is it personified in an individual? Is it personified in a group? Is it personified in another faith? No, it's not. It's personified by our inability to live in accordance with the values we articulate and come together and sacrifice and do what's necessary. This week's Parsha reading is a wonderful transition from Exodus to Leviticus. In the very first words of Leviticus, if you want to make a sacrifice, make it your best. We see around us, from Jerusalem to Newark, are not bigger than we are. They are a challenge and are a test to our abilities to come together and work in one accord against those challenges. We have so much unfulfilled potential. We as a people must understand that we are interdependent and thus must come together. King said it so eloquently in a jail cell in Birmingham in April of '63. We are all caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a common garment of destiny. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. It says in Micah, "Oh, what, O Lord, do you want from your people of Israel? To hate sin, to love God, and do justice." I know from my tradition, the African-American tradition, the African tradition, it's all about coming together. Spider webs united could tie up a lion. Sticks in a bundle can't be broken. These sayings are true, but Golda Meir said it. Jews together are strong, but Jews with other people are invincible. This is what we can manifest today as invincibility. And I aim to do it in Newark. And I know what I do in Newark, what the mayor does in Jerusalem, is not about an individual space. It is about a spiritual challenge. That if we can show that we can change problems, we can do incredible things. Now, in this room, I challenge you. Archimedes said, "Give me the right lever and I can change the world." In this room, through your united action, through your commitment, and an expansion of your moral imagination as to what is possible, we can change the world. Attacking poverty or education, showing that in one city we can make that kind of transformation will have an impact other places. They told me reducing crime more than 5 or 10% in my first term was an ambitious goal. Don't hang your hat on the murder rate, Cory. So many things have to do with that. Beyond your control, you're just the mayor. There's global economic issues. There's guns coming from the South. They told me we couldn't do it. And I said, you are absolutely crazy. Do not underestimate me. Do not underestimate humanity. We pulled together coalitions like you wouldn't believe. Many different faiths, many different sectors. We challenged our nonprofit community to get together for once. We set the foundations from our community all in one room. It was the first time they ever sat down together. We created a police foundation. We created other avenues for people to serve. Now, 2 years later, Newark, New Jersey is the #1 city in America for the reduction of shootings and murders over 40%. We can do whatever we desire. Emerson, if I could quote him, paraphrase him, he has a wonderful saying, that only which we have within can we see without. If we see no angels, it's because we harbor none. What do you see when you look at Jerusalem? What do you see when you think of American cities like Newark? There is work to do. We are the beneficiaries of a legacy of struggle and sacrifice beyond what can be believed. We are no longer called upon to fight wars of independence, be they in Israel or the United States. We are not called upon to fight in a 6-day war or storm beaches in Normandy. We are not called upon to do civil rights marches or to stand and defend borders off Katyusha rockets. But we, with our resources, are called upon to use our moral imagination and come together with others and solve the problems other people say are impossible. And I believe the battlegrounds are those sacred places, those holy cities, where other people have resigned themselves to troubles and problems. Our battlegrounds are the cities of our world. Let us make Jerusalem rise again. Let us make Newark an example of who America truly is. This is possible, and I know our conversation today will be just about that. Thank you.
Well said.
Thank you. Thanks.
Very nice. Very nice. Now I'm going to ask some questions to the mayors to keep the dialogue rolling, and then we will have questions from the audience. To both of you. In both your cities, because there's a high level of poverty, the tax base is weak. Because of that, do you think it best for philanthropy to experiment with new ideas or help shore up missing services? If there has to be a trade-off, how best do you leverage the philanthropic dollar?
Well, I definitely think philanthropy, excuse me, I'm a bit ill, can make a big difference when we talk about economic growth. I'm going to be in Boston this week, meeting with Professor Michael Porter that helped us a few years ago open a startup, a non-for-profit initiative called Startup Jerusalem. We invested a lot of philanthropy dollars first to figure out how to develop Jerusalem's competitive advantages. And now, after we've outlined culture tourism, we've outlined health life sciences, we set in motion to do some competitive analysis to other cities, and we've outlined areas where we could develop Jerusalem's competitive advantages. Then we realized that there are a number of leverages philanthropy could help in economic growth. Loans for small businesses. There's organizations in Jerusalem that are giving loans to young startups, young businesses, small businesses, and medium businesses. And that philanthropy dollars is crucial because the government cannot necessarily always do that. The government is not always in the right mindset, and there's very little flexibility in some of these areas for municipal government or national government to work. Sometimes my experience is that philanthropy could show the way, could show directions, new thinking. Municipal government does not have research and development money necessarily to invest in new thinking. And philanthropy, what's philanthropy? Philanthropy are business people sitting in this room with business-oriented thinking that have ideas, and the same way they have in businesses, and sometimes some of the breakthroughs happen outside of municipal government. And that's where I see the big challenge of partnership between philanthropy and municipal government. It could make a big, big difference. I'm coming from that area. And today, as a public servant, I've learned in the last 5 years so many things that it would have been hard for me to learn in the business, on the public side. So I encourage people to take a serious look at how to become leverage, how to become catalyst. And once those changes start happening, they take a life of their own. And the philanthropy it's less dependent on philanthropy. But that boot start, that initial phase, philanthropy can make a very big difference.
If I have to encourage folks in this room, it's a simple thing. first of all, you can't solve problems in isolation, in a vacuum. And I'm a big believer now, I'm convinced that there's not an issue we can talk about in America where we already don't have examples of people solving the problems, not mitigating the problems or ameliorating the problems, but solving problems. So let's just use education. There's not a school in a city in the United States that doesn't have one model of a school that's taking high poverty people from disadvantaged backgrounds and sending them all to college. To pick a city, I can show you schools that are actually accomplishing that. So the challenge often for cities like mine or others is that you have islands of excellence, but how do you make them hemispheres of hope? And this is what we're trying to do in Newark. We're trying to find the best ideas that are already out there and innovate upon them, make version 2.0, and aggregate them all together. And we're challenging the philanthropic community to either help us start a new idea, start a new pilot, incubating an idea, and I can give you great examples of some things we're doing that. So I'm always looking for what I call the venture philanthropists, the people who have the courage to be first movers, to invest early. Or I'm looking for people that want to take the larger picture, and I'll give you the best example to stick on education. We all know charter schools are working in the United States, but the problem is, are the high-performing ones replicable? So we were able to convince some of the larger foundations in our country, from Gates to Broad, to Julian Robertson's foundation and others, to team up, come together, coalitions, and create one massive fund in a city. They actually picked 3 to see if you could take these schools and build them so to scale at such a quick speed that within a handful of years you could hit a tipping point in a neighborhood. In the same way that, that FedEx was a tipping point challenge to the UPS. If you never think about UPS, they were slow, old bureaucracies not doing and operating efficiently. But when FedEx came along and showed they could do things better, suddenly UPS changed. Overnight, they went and said, oh, we need overnight delivery. Let's start competing. And now you have a system of delivering mail in the United States that's far improved. So these are the ways we think of where philanthropy could make a massive difference, either in incubating ideas or trying to take a larger view and making massive change.
Thank you. Mayor Barkat. Has there been an over-reliance on philanthropy, either local or international? Is there a line that shouldn't be crossed? What limits are there on the public's responsibility or the role of the wealthy in a community?
Well, it's a complicated answer. I'll try to give it a few perspectives. I think that a lot of philanthropy that happened in Israel in the past was, give me the money, I know what to do with it, bye. And that wasn't exactly philanthropy. That was, from my perspective, giving some money and making sure that you're happy with yourself, but you haven't really exactly figured out if your money worked well. I like the phrase that the Mayor Booker talked about, which is venture philanthropy, because when you think venture philanthropy, you think about investment. You don't think about the giving, you're focusing on the return on the investment. And that kind of philanthropy must scale in Israel. We have underinvestment as venture philanthropy. We may sometimes have too much giving. Too much givings that sometimes cause great dependencies. I see, sometimes I see too many people that depend on philanthropy and they're used to getting all these fish rather than the rods. So I do believe that we must, there is a trend happening in the philanthropy world that I really encourage. Venture philanthropy is investment, is about investing, and then you got to think through. You got to develop a non-for-profit and make it focus and understand, define clear goals, seek those partnerships that Mayor Booker talked about, and looking for those. How do you really make a difference? How do you scale? How do you get the municipality involved? And that is the role of venture philanthropy, business-oriented people that get really involved. The social return on investment is what we seek, and that has to be expanded. That we have a shortage of. Sometimes we have too much of the rest.
What role is there for smaller donors to work with their municipal governments?
To partner. My proposal to philanthropists is not many things. Is to look for those, as the mayor said, those tipping points in education, you know, I've heard you talk about the education system. You read my script. That's exactly what we're doing in Jerusalem. We're
staff gave me your notes.
Yes, I know. It's about expanding successes. That's how the business world works. Business-oriented entrepreneurs think of how can we become better than others? Let's look at the market, let's see what works, and how can we be better, or how can we expand successes? That's exactly the kind of thinking that we all share in our business life. And we must bring that to make a better return. So the smaller philanthropists have to partner with the large organizations. You don't have to invent your own new wheels every day. You have to focus on things that work and make a difference. So when talking about expanding schools, successful schools in Jerusalem, there are the large opportunities, that's the big fish, and there are smaller opportunities in the same exact area that make a difference. So there's room for smaller and larger philanthropists as long as we focus together on things that make a difference and not go sporadic.
Mayor Booker, would you like to comment on that?
Look, there's no number too small when you have the urgencies that we have, and you're trying to prove a thesis, a theory, which really I've dedicated my career to. So, you know, Barry Mattis, who's sitting here, who's my right hand in so many ways, she and I work all the time talking to donors or people of wealth, showing them ways that they could take even a small contribution, $10, $20, $25, $30,000, and leverage it for in a large way, connecting them, whatever their passion is. If it's public safety, let's show you how you could save lives. It's just a matter of being creative and entering into a creative partnership with people in municipal government. And so it's critical to have government play a role. Government cannot solve all the problems. Philanthropy actually, to me, is a critical difference maker. But we've got to start having creative dialogues with innovative mayors like the one to my left, because if you have a urge, I want to make a difference with children, I want to make a difference with public health, and you have the right leader, and this is why it's critical. He and I were talking before we came here. It's critical to have a dynamic leader who's open and entrepreneurial. We both are just the devotees of Michael Porter, and we talk to him too about leveraging competitive advantage. If you have the right leader, and I think there's an opportunity in Jerusalem now, when you have an urge to focus on a certain issue, you can work together to find something creative where not only your money will have the good intended, like the technology that Barry and I directed one philanthropist will, but if once you prove that it works, it will radiate further into the community. Yeah. We have things now that we had venture philanthropists come to our city and start in our city that now the city of Camden saw, oh my gosh, look at the success you're having, I want to copy it. And suddenly it goes viral. And then suddenly you have Detroit taking that idea and innovating even more upon it. So one little bit of philanthropy, $20,000, $50,000, suddenly has an impact worth literally millions.
Okay, I'm going to ask one more question, then we'll open up the questions to the audience. Looking into the future, both of you, in the near term, does the economic crisis create a new kind of focus that philanthropy can uniquely fill? And with the bad economy, will you change what you ask for from funders?
Yes, we will ask for more. Look, everything is an excuse and a distraction from what our calling is as a people. Why are we here? And this is why Shmuly and I talk about this all the time. It really is about being a value-based society, and why I'm privileged to be in partnership with the Jewish Values Network, because that's where it starts. Whatever the challenge or the crisis, I know from my culture and my community, my family didn't make excuses. My ancestors didn't make excuses. There was work to do. The building was on fire. We had to figure out a way to put it out. So you have people like Booker T. Washington starting schools where he has the students themselves building the bricks and stacking them. There's always got to be a way. And frankly, in the black community in the United States, wasn't really relying on government to solve its problems. It was finding a way as a community, working in tangent with white folks and Jewish folks to make powerful, dramatic things happen. Yes, we are in the worst financial crisis of my lifetime, but if we're going to obsess about that and not focus on using our moral imagination about what we can do, then we've surrendered to challenges less large than our ancestors did.
I would say that when I speak to philanthropists, and we all know it's not easy times, I just want to remind everyone that Jerusalem, 3,000-year-old brand, is in distress. And we're all shareholders of the city. And while it's hard times, the challenge is not disappearing. The challenge of the city of Jerusalem, making it work better, strengthening the city, building it, is one of the top priorities, in my mind, of the Jewish people and the world as a whole. And that challenge is not going away. So I believe we should align our interests. One of the philanthropists I talked to, when I talked to him about the challenge, said to me, you know, Nir, you're probably right, because if Jerusalem doesn't work well, many of the other things we do are not as important. And so when we all are struggling, we must focus on the important things, and that's Jerusalem. I was listening to you, Mayor, talking so enthusiastic about the future and the importance of the city of Jerusalem. I cannot agree with you more, and if Jerusalem is a microcosmos of what is happening in the Middle East or the whole world, we have to make our little city of Jerusalem work much, much better. And when people find it hard, having a hard time, I said, well, fine. I've learned that philanthropists, we mustn't push philanthropy. Philanthropy is a pull thing. If it doesn't come from your heart, it's very, very difficult to ask for more. I've learned never push philanthropists around. So it's about just making sure people realize the situation, and whoever wants to step up to the plate will find great partnership. And if it's hard times, you give a little bit less, but don't stop giving. I think it's the key.
And just to add to that, which you know, I'm sure from your experiences, it's not just about giving money. There's expertise. People here are successful business folks. A lot of nonprofits that are running, they not only need somebody to give them money, they really need people to help them know how to run a business and create better systems of accountability. And you exhibit that not with your words, but with your life and what you've done by getting involved with your business expertise, not only in nonprofits, but also in government. Oh,
that's the next step. Some of the Israelis here, it's only a matter of years then you realize that you have to take that next phase and not only stay as philanthropists. The Israelis here in the crowd know exactly what I'm talking about, but take that next step and go into public service.
Make Aliyah into the higher calling of public service.
Okay, I'll open the questions to the floor. Yes.
Hi, I'm Mary Ann Stein with the Mariah Fund and with the I'm Mary Ann Stein with the Mariah Fund.
The Mariah Fund?
The Mariah Fund.
Is that Mariah Carey's foundation?
No.
Or, no?
I think maybe your biblical education will remind you that there is the Mountain of Moriah,
Absolutely.
which is one of the more disputed pieces of real estate in the world, I believe. Which actually brings me to my question. But by the way, I have to compliment you, Rabbi Booker. And I hope you'll invite all of us to your bar mitzvah.
In Jerusalem.
In Jerusalem. But you'll have to make some changes at the wall so some of us can participate who otherwise wouldn't be able to do it. I would like to ask you a question, Mayor Barkat. You talked about the importance of Jerusalem and Jerusalem, 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 and as mayor, I certainly understand that. But Jerusalem is in many ways, the capital of Israel for many of us. If Tel Aviv has the embassies, at least the Knesset and the capital is there in Jerusalem, and it is what people see. Jerusalem is a city of three peoples. It is a city of the Jews, it is a city of the Christians, it is a city of the Muslims. And you spoke earlier about the Jews and doing this for the Jews. And I would be really interested in hearing how, as a prominent capital in a mayor from the people who consider themselves to be the light unto the nation, how Jerusalem can be a more shared city, and how you would respond also in terms of thinking about Jerusalem's role in terms of the welfare of the country of Israel and peace in the Middle East. And I think that you were given a major challenge by our Secretary of State recently, who felt that the demolition of Arab homes, which we all know vastly outnumbers the number of permits, is not particularly helpful to the efforts to bring peace to that region?
Okay, well, first, you have to realize that the vision that I've proposed is a common vision for three people. When you talk about bringing 10 million tourists to Jerusalem, the Arabs I talk to in East Jerusalem, the business people, love it. They realize it's a classic win-win, where when it rains on everybody. 3.5 months, almost 4 months in position, one of the first things I've done is I gave instructions to the planners, the municipal planners and others, to put a plan together that we will probably bring in the next few months, of how to take the city of David, the city of the Kfar Silwan, and a lot of areas in East Jerusalem, and dramatically upgrade the planning process for both residents and commercial and tourism. Jerusalem is underinvested in many, many ways. And first, the planning has to come into place. So I'm deeply involved in the planning process of how to develop Jerusalem to become a destination site for tourists. We need 30,000 new rooms, hotel rooms. A lot of them are going to be in East Jerusalem. The culture tourism industry, a lot of it is Arab employees. We are dramatically pushing and closing gaps in education system. We just opened a school 3 weeks ago, and we're pushing the government dramatically to invest in the quality of life of the residents of East Jerusalem. Now, demolition of houses is a different story altogether. Jerusalem has become one of the most horrific places in terms of planning and legal obeying the law. And ask Mayor Booker about what happens when a city is losing control in terms of obeying the law. You can't do anything if you don't obey the law. Since the beginning of the year, there were about 30 houses, 28, a little bit more houses demolished in Jerusalem. Practically 40% of them in West Jerusalem. Now, do people expect me to stop demolitions in West Jerusalem or just in East Jerusalem? It doesn't make any sense. So there's a lot of political coupling which doesn't make any sense in Jerusalem. I'm decoupling it all, focusing on how to improve quality of life in West and East Jerusalem, how to increase law obedience in the city of Jerusalem in all parts. That's the role of the mayor. And by the way, everything I do is under law. There's no house that comes to me for a demolishing order that doesn't go through the people in charge of the legal system, which are not only municipal, they're governmental. It's the Yoetz HaMishpati LeIriya. How do you translate that? The legal advisor to the municipality works under the legal advisor of the government, under the Supreme Court. So anything that happens in Jerusalem has to obey the law. There are gaps in planning, both in West Jerusalem and in East Jerusalem. There are shortages of houses in East Jerusalem and in West Jerusalem. In East Jerusalem, they build illegally. In Jerusalem, they vanish from the city because they don't have enough apartments. So we have problems both West and East, and we have to dramatically improve the planning process and the execution process and be very honest with ourselves and all of the three people of Jerusalem. The vision is a common vision, a united Jerusalem where everyone enjoys it. And it has to be followed by major investments, and I'm totally committed to investing in Arabs in East Jerusalem. That was what I said before the elections. That is what I'm starting to do after the elections. I'm just fulfilling the things I said I will do.
Unfortunately, I think we only have time for one more question. Any questions?
Anybody but Shmuley, please.
My question is, what was your biggest failure? How did you learn from it?
I could speak volumes. He's been in office for 3 months. I think you should cut him some slack. Unless you want to go back to your childhood, I'm sure there's some there.
Oh, I don't know where to start. There's so many of them.
I make the same mistake over and over again. I think when I go over to Shmuley's house for Shabbat, I keep thinking I can get out in an hour. Look, I've made a lot of failures, and some of them are very political. You know, I am a big believer in coalitions, but I fought such a hard battle getting into office, and there were a lot of people who fought against me, and not reaching out quickly enough to those people who opposed me or fought against me, making the presumption that anybody who fought against me was corrupt. So there's a lot of those things about, again, the challenge I think in life is to live in accordance to your values. And I don't think I was evidencing my values in my first 6 months enough when I got into office to embracing individuals. I think the only failures I've had have been lack of faith in the people that I represent. I have a phenomenal city. There's such goodness there. There's such kindness. You know, at times I used to think that I had to wear all the challenges and the problems on my own shoulders, when the reality is if you include other people and open up to them and recognize that while our history screams to a declaration of independence, actually the truth is it's a declaration of interdependence, and I need other people and can rely on them. And the final thing I'll say is just to go back to my friend from the Moriah Foundation, is I have a lot of hopes and dreams for my city that actually I share when I look to Jerusalem. And I'll end with this note, you know, and again, it goes to a very big value in America, to the African American culture, but also to Judaism. You know, during the high holidays, there's a song that's sung that is to the gods, to the heavens. May my house be the house of prayers for all nations. And it's really my hope for Newark, which is a diverse city, that we can be a home for all nations to live and evidence themselves, all differential peoples. And as a Christian, Jerusalem is my city. So to me, I believe that the vision for Jerusalem that I know the mayor holds and that we all must hold is that Jerusalem be that sacred space, that holy city that is a testimony to the highest ideals of Judaism, which ultimately are the highest ideals of humanity, that it become a city for all of us, a celebration. May that Jewish house become a house of prayers for all people. Thank you.